Same trip, same family, same plane home, and two completely different verdicts. Harry stepped off that flight and, according to people close to him, used one word to describe what had just happened: healing. Meghan looked at the exact same days, the exact same schedule, the exact same country, and reportedly called it something else entirely: a failure. And here's the thing: neither of them is lying. That's what makes this story so strange, and honestly, so much more interesting than anything the tabloids have done with it. Because this isn't a story about who's right. It's a story about how two people can live through the same week and come home from two different trips. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to watch this visit twice. First, the way Harry saw it. Every moment, every reunion, every quiet minute at his mother's grave. And then, we're going to rewind the tape, go back to day one, and watch it all again through Meghan's eyes. And I promise you, the second time through, the same footage is going to look very, very different. Let's start with Harry's version. Because on the surface, Harry's version is the one the whole world saw. Picture the moment. It's been 4 years. 4 years since King Charles has been in the same room as his son's children. 4 years of headlines, of memoirs, of interviews, of lawyers, of that endless Cold War between Montecito and the palace that filled 1,000 front pages. And then, quietly, without a press release, without a staged photo call, a car pulls up at Highgrove. And inside that car are 2 small children who barely know their grandfather. Think about what that moment actually is, underneath all the royal noise. Strip away the titles for a second. This is an elderly father who has been seriously ill, seeing his grandchildren. This is a son who wrote an entire book about his family's dysfunction, walking back through the door. Whatever you think of Harry, whatever you think of Charles, that moment took something from both of them. Swallowed pride, real risk. Because a meeting like that can go wrong in 100 ways, and both men knew it. And by every account we have, it didn't go wrong. It went well. The reports describe warmth, ease, a grandfather getting to just be a grandfather for an afternoon. No cameras, no courtiers scripting the encounter. For Harry, this was the thing he'd been circling for years. Not a deal, not an apology tour. Just proof that the door wasn't sealed shut. Proof that his children could have a grandfather, and not just a headline about one. People close to the Sussexes said Harry came away from Highgrove lighter, like something that had been clenched for 4 years finally let go. And if the trip had ended there, it would already have been the biggest royal reconciliation story in years. But it didn't end there, because there was one more stop on this trip. And for Harry, it was never really about Highgrove at all. There was a place he needed to take his children, a place he'd been carrying with him since he was 12 years old. Althorp. If you know Harry's story, you know what that name means. The Spencer family estate, the island on the lake, the place where Diana is buried. Harry was 12 when he walked behind his mother's coffin in front of 2 billion people. 12 years old, hands at his sides, being told the whole way that this was duty. He has spent his entire adult life talking about what that did to him. The therapy, the years of pretending it didn't happen, the anger. And now picture this. That same boy, grown up, a father himself, driving through those gates with his own children in the back seat, bringing them to meet the grandmother they will only ever know through stories. There's no press footage of this, no official photo. Everything we know comes from what's been shared afterwards. And honestly, that's exactly the point. This was the one part of the trip that was designed to be unseen. By all accounts, it was simple. A father, 2 kids, some flowers, and an island where his mother rests. He reportedly told them about her, what she was like, what she loved. The small, silly human details, the kind you only pass down out loud, parent to child, because no documentary will ever hold them. And this, right here, is why the word Harry reached for afterwards was healing. Because for him, this trip closed a circle that had been open since 1997. His mother never met his children. He couldn't fix that. But he could stand on that ground with them and say her name and make her real to them. There are very few things in Harry's public life that belong entirely to him. This one did. So that's the first cut of the film. A son reconciled with his father, children meeting their grandfather, a pilgrimage to a mother's grave, done privately, done with dignity. If you only watch that version, this trip isn't just a success. It might be the best week Harry has had in a decade. But here's what should bother you. Here's the detail that doesn't fit. If this trip was such a triumph, if the family came home healed and whole, then why did one of the people on that plane reportedly describe the entire visit as a failure? Not disappointing, not complicated. A failure. Because while all of this was happening, while the world was watching Harry's redemption arc play out, there was another person living those exact same days. And in her version of the film, almost every one of these beautiful moments has something missing from the frame. Her. So now we do what I promised. We rewind the tape, all the way back to day one. Same trip, same schedule, same family. But this time, we watch it through Meghan's eyes, and I'm telling you, you will not see the same movie. Okay, rewind. Go back to the airport, back to day one. Forget everything you just felt about Highgrove and Althorp, because we're about to walk through those exact same days again, and this time, the camera is pointed somewhere else. And before we start the second cut, one quick thing. This channel exists for exactly this kind of story. The version behind the version. The human mechanics underneath the royal headlines. If that's the kind of storytelling you want more of, subscribing genuinely helps, and it takes 1 second. All right, tape's rewound. Let's watch it again. Day one, take two. And immediately, notice something. In the first version of this film, the story started with a car pulling up at Highgrove. In Meghan's version, the story starts earlier than that. And it starts with a question that sounds simple, but isn't. What exactly is she supposed to do on this trip? Think about it. Harry has a script. Son reconciles with father. Grieving boy brings his children to his mother's grave. Every hour of his visit has meaning built into it. Meghan's schedule, reportedly, had something very different built into it. Nothing. No public appearance, no engagement, no moment on the steps, no wave, no camera. According to reporting on this trip, that wasn't an accident or an oversight. That was the shape of the visit. And sources close to the situation say that this, specifically this, is what left Meghan frustrated. Not the king, not the reception. The invisibility. Now, the easy take, the one half the internet ran with immediately, is vanity. She just wanted attention. But stay with me here, because if you actually look at Meghan's position, the frustration starts to look less like ego and more like arithmetic. Consider what Meghan Markle actually is in 2026, professionally. She's not a working royal. She walked away from that machine and built her own. There's the Netflix side of the operation. There's, as ever, the lifestyle brand, the products, the whole carefully constructed aesthetic of her life in California. Every single one of those ventures runs on the same fuel: visibility. Her face, her image, her presence in the frame. That is the engine of the entire business. She doesn't have a palace press office generating relevance for her anymore. She has to generate it herself, appearance by appearance, image by image. So now run the numbers the way she might have run them. A trip to Britain is one of the highest visibility stages on the planet for her. Global press already assembled. Every camera in the country already pointed at the family. The kind of media moment you cannot buy. And believe me, brands try. And her role in it, reportedly, was to not be seen. Days inside the biggest story in the world, standing just outside the frame of it. For Harry, being invisible on this trip was the whole point. Privacy was the gift. For Meghan, invisibility wasn't a gift. It was a cost, a real one, measurable in exactly the currency her post-royal life runs on. And now, go back through the beautiful moments from the first cut, one by one, and watch what happens to them. The reunion at Highgrove. In Harry's version, that's a son and a father finding their way back. In Meghan's version, look at the frame. Where is she in that story? The reporting focused on Charles, on Harry, on the grandchildren. The narrative slot for Meghan in that scene barely exists. Althorp. In Harry's version, the most sacred moment of the trip. And to be clear, nobody suggests Meghan resented that visit itself, but notice again whose story it is. It's Harry's mother, Harry's childhood, Harry's healing. The whole emotional payload of this trip belonged to him. She was there for days, inside the most photographed family on Earth, and came out of it with almost nothing that was hers. Not a moment, not an image, not a headline she chose. And that's the context for the word failure. Because here's what I think people miss when they laugh at that word. She's not necessarily grading the family reunion. She might be grading her own trip, by her own metrics. And by her metrics, the trip produced nothing. 0 public moments, 0 brand value, 0 control over how she appeared because she didn't appear at all. The same week that Harry's ledger shows pure profit, hers shows a loss. Same trip. 2 accounting systems, 2 verdicts. Suddenly both of them make perfect sense. But this is where the story stops being about 1 week in Britain and becomes something bigger. Because think about what we've actually uncovered here. This isn't a disagreement about a trip. This is 2 people who measure life in different currencies, married to each other. Harry's currency is emotional. Closure, family, memory, his children knowing where they come from. You can't put it on a spreadsheet, and he doesn't want to. Meghan's currency, at least professionally, is visibility. Presence, image, narrative control. You can absolutely put it on a spreadsheet, and arguably she has to, because there's a business depending on it. Neither currency is wrong, but they don't convert. A week that pays Harry in full can leave Meghan at 0, and vice versa. And the uncomfortable question this trip raises is not about Meghan and the palace at all. It's quieter than that, and closer to home. What happens inside a marriage when one partner's best week is the other partner's failure? Not a fight, nothing dramatic, just 2 people describing the same 7 days and discovering they weren't on the same trip. And that tension isn't just a feeling. It has a price tag. Because somewhere in a calendar that doesn't exist yet, there's a next visit to Britain. And whether that visit happens, when it happens, and what it looks like, may depend less on King Charles's warmth than on a much simpler question. Why would Meghan sign up for another failure? So now you've seen both cuts of the film, and before we put them side by side, sit with how strange this actually is. We didn't change a single fact between the 2 versions. Same flights, same days, same house, same island, same children in the back seat. All we changed was where the camera was pointing. And the entire meaning of the week flipped. That should unsettle you a little, because it means the question everyone's been arguing about online, was this trip a success or a disaster, is broken from the start. It assumes there's one trip to judge. There wasn't. There were two. There always are. Let's put the two verdicts on the table, side by side, and be honest about both. Harry's verdict, healing, is real. That's not spin. A man who walked behind his mother's coffin at 12 stood at her grave with his own children and gave them something no institution ever gave him. A version of her that belongs to their family and no one else. He saw his father embrace his kids after 4 years of silence. If you measure that week in the currency Harry measures his life in, closure, memory, blood, it might be the richest week he's had since he left Britain. Nobody gets to take that away from him. But Meghan's verdict, failure, is also real. Not because the reunion failed, it didn't, but because her week and his week were never the same week. She spent those days inside the biggest media event on the planet with, reportedly, no role in it. No appearance, no image, no moment. For someone whose entire post-royal life, the shows, the brand, the whole architecture of as ever runs on being seen, a week of enforced invisibility isn't neutral. It's a loss, and she seems to have named it honestly. The world laughed at the word failure, but she may simply have been the only one grading her own trip instead of her husband's. And here's where this stops being royal gossip and becomes something almost universal. Because two people coming home from the same event with opposite verdicts, that's not a Sussex problem. That's a marriage problem, in the oldest, most ordinary sense. Anyone who's ever been in a long relationship has lived a small version of this. The party that was wonderful for you and exhausting for them. The family visit that healed something in you and cost something in them. Most couples get to have that argument in private. This couple has to have it while two hemispheres of the press keep score. And that's the part I can't stop thinking about. The real tension revealed by this trip isn't Montecito versus the palace. That story is old, and honestly, this visit suggests it's softening. The new tension is quieter and much closer to home. It's the gap between a man whose best possible life is private and a woman whose working life cannot afford privacy. That gap was always there. This trip just measured it. So what happens next? Because this is where the two verdicts stop being philosophy and start steering actual events. Somewhere down the line, there's a next invitation. Another Christmas, another summer, maybe another quiet afternoon at Highgrove. Harry, by every indication, wants that. Every account of this trip suggests he came home wanting more of it, more grandfather, more Althorp, more of his children knowing where half of them comes from. But every future visit now has to clear a hurdle it didn't have before. Because if the shape of these trips stays the same, private for him, invisible for her, then every invitation is asking Meghan to volunteer for another failure, by her own honest math. Maybe she goes anyway, as a gift to him, and that's its own kind of love. Maybe she stays home, and the press spends a week reading meaning into an empty seat. Or maybe, and watch for this one, the next trip gets renegotiated. A public moment for her, a camera allowed in somewhere, a frame she's finally inside. If you ever see that happen, you'll know exactly what was traded to make that trip possible. And now you'll know why. Which brings us to the last question, the one I genuinely can't answer for you. Who decides whether a trip like this succeeded? Is it Harry, holding the only currency that survives us? Memory, family, a mother's name spoken out loud to her grandchildren? Or is it Meghan, holding the currency the modern world actually runs on? Attention, image, presence in the frame. Your gut answer to that question probably says less about the Sussexes and more about you, about which currency you've built your own life around. And that's exactly why I want to hear it. Tell me in the comments which cut of this film felt true to you, Harry's or Meghan's. And more than that, tell me if you've ever come home from the same trip as someone you love with a completely different verdict. I read those comments. And stories like this one usually start there. If this way of looking at a story worked for you, the two cuts, the rewind, the quiet version underneath the loud one, a like tells the algorithm to show it to people who are tired of the shouting, and a subscription means you'll be here for the next one. Because here's the truth this family handed us, without meaning to. Every shared life is a film with two cuts. Most of the time, we only ever screen our own. Harry called it healing, and he was right. Meghan called it a failure, and she wasn't wrong. The same 7 days, the same country, the same plane home. 2 movies. And the next time someone you love describes a week you both lived through, and it sounds nothing like the week you remember, don't rush to correct them. You might just be watching their cut for the first time.